There you go. Thank you. Right, let me start on Côte d'Ivoire, and I need to make some introductory remarks first before I go into this. Firstly, this was one of the toughest group visits I've ever done, because in the Francophone circles, everything has to have an official stamp on it. And I can just say in advance that the South African ambassador, Darian Naidu, was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. He even phoned the San Pedro, head of the San Pedro Port Authority, to make sure that things happened. It's very much that way in Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire is an amazing market. It's sitting at about 7 to 8% growth. It's one of the highest growing GDP growth rates in sub-Saharan Africa. But, I think Duncan and them know what's coming now. The performance by the South Africans is nothing short of pathetic. I asked Duncan to do some investigation for me. He's a big trade specialist, so he came up with some interesting stuff. 8% of the total value of our exports into sub-Saharan Africa go to the 22 French-speaking countries in sub-Saharan Africa. 8%. And I'm not finished yet. 8% of that 8%, 34% goes to Katanga alone for the mines in southern DRC. So this is bad, but on the other hand, it's also good, because it means that we've got a hang of a lot to do. And what's really strange about this visit in Côte d'Ivoire, what really strange, as I've been tracking San Pedro port development for a long time, and I believed in the project, and I was obviously tracking it all that time. And when I actually went on the pilot visit, I actually realized there's actually quite a lot of South African involvement in the project. You know, ECIC, IDC came with us on the trip, by the way, but they were already there. Cresco is in our midst now, doing the studies on the power plant there, the financial studies on that. So, hey Andy, not so? Yeah. And the port as well. So there you go, South African entity. So, and Gibb had been around as well, and there'd been a couple of players. So an ECIC is regularly visiting that area. Mr. Baudouin, Bia Baudouin, who represents Francophone Africa at. So therefore, it's strange. It's just very strange. Plus, on top of the other thing, there's been a number of bilateral discussions between the governments of South Africa and Côte d'Ivoire. And we see Côte d'Ivoire very much as a kind of hub, which it is. It's undoubtedly a hub. And so we see it as a big access into the Francophone community as well. So it's not just Côte d'Ivoire, because Côte d'Ivoire feeds the internal countries of Burkina Faso, Mali. I'm going to be hopefully much shorter than my colleagues, because I've already done a presentation on San Pedro at a previous one. So I'm just going to sort of pull out the main things, and there's always a quite comprehensive visit report that I've done that Africa House subscribers are entitled to. Firstly, I just want to say that from the outset, I need to explain to you that all over Africa now, there is a desperate search for deep water ports. You've got your traditional ports, and in South Africa as well. Cape Town, Durban, these are traditional ports. They were created in colonial times. Nobody thought of draft at that time, because today you've got ocean vessels that require considerable draft. So everywhere, and Mozambique's a very good example of that, how Maputo and Beira are very, very limited ports by the very nature of them, and then Nacala is a natural deep water port. So it's like that everywhere. There's the traditional port, and then there's the deep water port. When I was in Cameroon last year, same thing. So where we were looking at Douala, and then we were looking at Kribi. And Kribi is a deep water port, and it's the alternative. So that's a pattern everywhere. In South Africa, Saldanha Bay, Richards Bay, you've got that scenario. So, but I can tell you straight, Abidjan port is so badly congested that San Pedro just simply has to happen. There's no way it could take you. We went in 2 shifts to look at Abidjan port, kindly facilitated by Bolloré. And the second half, we had to go in 2 batches for security reasons. And the second batch never got there because it took him so long. I asked for them to get back. And did you go in that one? Oh, you waited with me. Shame, so you never saw it. Because they took them 2 hours to get out of the port. So that was a little hiccup from the visit point of view. So San Pedro has been around a long time. It's the world's leading cocoa export port, because as you all know, Côte d'Ivoire is a big cocoa producer. So but it has inadequacies. And then the other thing that's is a linkage between Abidjan and San Pedro. is like vital because you want to join the two ports. So therefore that coastal road, which is about 340 kilometers, is not in a good state, needs rehab, and that's a very urgent project right now. It's the first project that has to move. And you know, when I was in Kribi and when I've been in the other ports, in Twara, etc., in Twara is a good example too. One of the first things that moves, guys, is roads. Because the roads are essential. They have to happen as first phase. After you've done your EIAs and your original planning or whatever, your GIS, there is absolutely necessary to have the roads moving. So often people ask me, they say, Paul, am I to wait 5 years for this project or 2 years or whatever, or can I get in now? And my reply is very standard. It depends what you do. If you're in GIS or if you're in training, for example, for the refinery, you better move your backside now because it's going to take 3 years to get the skills up for that if you're going to recruit local people. If you're going to bring a whole lot of Filipinos in, that's a different story. I don't think that'll go down well with the Mozambicans. So basically, it depends where you are in the site. If you're talking rail, then obviously because of the high capital expenditure and the long gestation periods are going to take much longer. And it's going to be third phase or fourth phase maybe even. So the other mistake I made from the outset in my analysis of San Pedro from afar, because I'd been to Côte d'Ivoire since 1982 often, but I had never been to San Pedro until this year. And I thought that it was all about the oil and gas, much like Takoradi in Ghana, where we took a very comprehensive visit. It's about the mining. It's very much about the mining because the mines in Côte d'Ivoire and the western part of Côte d'Ivoire into Guinea and Liberia and Mali. So the thing that's driving San Pedro is the mining. Côte d'Ivoire is producing oil and gas, but at a limited amount at the moment. So, and there are plans for an oil, that's more like a storage terminal that they're looking at for the future in San Pedro. Okay, and then and the limited oil production, like I've just said, and inadequate infrastructure and accommodation. Accommodation is a big issue already in San Pedro. So, you know, when you go to these, you look at port projects and you say, well, I'm not involved in ports. Why should I go with you, Paul, to San Pedro? Because there's water. Like Ernst was with me because of the water side of things. There's water, there's power, there's access roads, there's all kinds of things required, accommodation and everything that comes. So it's a bit like a pebble in a pond, and it creates that ripple effect. And it creates a need for lots of ancillary things. Okay, so what's going to happen in the future scenario? This is short term. That road has to be done quite urgently. And everywhere I went, you know, it used to be that you could go and buy your supplies in Abidjan and come back in the same day. Now you've got to overnight, because the way is now into the interior. The only way to get between San Pedro and Abidjan is by going through the interior. And it's a pretty awesome long trip. So like you know, I can't remember, but you have to overnight. And then the other thing is they're pushing very hard at this, and then a rail linkage. There's two phases to the rail linkage. One is to Odiene. There should be a stroke on the E there, and Man, which is in western Côte d'Ivoire, which will be the basic link. It's a kind of like crossroads, like Isiola is for Lamu. So there's a crossroads, and that's basically where there will be a first phase of the rail line, and then the second phase of the rail line is into Mali. So they've got a very ambitious rail project there. I had a rail specialist with me. He's unfortunately not with us here in the room now, but I deliberately got him because I knew the rail component was very important. And I pitched it to him differently because they're a consultancy on rail and not just a procurer. And I said to him, listen, the time for planning of the railway, bogey technology, etc., is now, you know, for that project. So I would consider that you should come with me to San Pedro, and he did, and he found it very beneficial to go. And also the other thing is we took GIS people, we've been involved with GIS people as well, Southern Mapping and so on, also as well because the GIS planning is very early in the project cycle, and therefore they have to happen soon. There's an establishment of they're moving the fishing port, and they're going to, I'll show you a picture of the port later on. They want to move the fishing port, and so that they can create this new area which will be dedicated to the mining mainly. And then there's, Andy knows all about this project, about the power plant with the importation of coal. Where's the coal coming from, Andy?
South Africa and Colombia is the most likely sources at the moment.
Yeah, it's like in Lamu as well. The coal for there would come from South Africa. So you see there's another South African connection with this whole thing. So 300 megawatt coal-fired power plant. Maybe Andy can just say a few words later on about that. And then this is nice, oil and gas terminal, and we are very gratified to have a very good comprehensive meeting with Petrosea, which I didn't get right during my pilot visit, but I got it right in the main visit. And Petrosea is the national oil company, and it's a long way off though, it's really a long way off. But nevertheless, that's part of it. And then the minerals terminal, that's much more imminent. And we met with Sodima, the national mining company, also to discuss that. For that. They are pushing very much in the short, this is another short-term project, is they're pushing very much this 150-hectare industrial. There's 2,000 hectares been, or as I say there, that's been allocated for the development. There's a lot of space around San Pedro. There's a lot. And also what's fascinating is to see that on the one side, on the far side of the port, there's where the industrial zone will be, there's already an established cement plant and a new cement plant going up right next to the existing one, right next to it. So that was quite interesting to see. When you go to San Pedro, you shouldn't just spend time in the port. It's pretty small, the port, but the area around it is quite interesting, and it'll tell you a lot about that. Then you see the cocoa and all of that sort of stuff and those installations. At the same time, you can see that this is the surrounding area, the 2,000 hectares, is very important. They're pushing this 150 hectares for industrial and logistics park as quickly as possible, and that's what they were punting to us, is to come and invest there as well. And then create a regional logistics platform at Odiene, because, as I said to you, that's in the interior, about 150 k's, and that is where is a crossroads. So they'll need to establish that as a regional logistic. And then, amongst other things, they've got a new international airport planned as well. We'll see about that. But anyway, that's in the pipeline. I'd love to show you this picture. This is the business class lounge at San Pedro Airport. I thought you'd enjoy this. This gentleman here is that gentleman there. I don't want to point this at you because I'll drill a hole in your head with this thing. But that was at San Pedro, and Liz knows what a good photographer I am, and so she complimented me on this wonderful picture of San Pedro Port. What is this? You see these containers here? There are stacks of containers all along here. It's quite substantial, and that's where the breakwater will be moved and extended, and then the fishing port's going to be pushed out that way, and then this side is they're developing, and then there's another breakwater going out here, and basically that's the cement plants on this far side there. So that's the scenario. So in conclusion, I told you I'd be brief. In conclusion, I just want to say that we need to look at Francophone Africa. We've got a number of, this visit's very different. This visit entails a lot of follow-up work. In fact, we've got meetings and meetings and meetings now on it. The ambassador is incredibly serious that this thing has to go further. And that's where I come to my old adage about hunting in packs. It's so clear to me, guys, that as we move into Africa, please, guys, don't donner in, to use a good South African English expression, don't donner in on your own. Really, I cannot tell you how important it was to have the IDC and the ECIC with us on that visit. It gives substance to the visit. And that's why we at Africa House have said we will always take these guys now. And if we could wave a magic wand and have DBSA as well, that would be fantastic. Okay? But we need to do that. On the Francophone thing, we need to explain to you, people like Philip, for example, who knows how harder the Francophone legal system very, very well. We have clients and ourselves, when we can't do it, we have people like Philip who know a lot. And we can really, really help you start filling this gap in Francophone Africa. The old idea of France being the chasse gardée of France is really not true today. I'm not saying France does not have an influence. Please do not get me wrong. I do believe that. But it's much more nuanced than when I lived in Gabon in the mid-80s. It's much more nuanced. It's a global scenario now. There's everybody there, not only the BRICS countries, but countries like Turkey and so on. So please, it is very necessary. Come to speak to us about our drive into Francophone Africa. We did Cameroon and Republic of Congo last year. Speak to us, because it is much ground for us to penetrate into.